In the early years of the 12th century, Europe was a land ruled by fear. The fall of the Roman Empire centuries before had left a fractured world, a patchwork of kingdoms and fiefdoms, constantly at war with one another. Roads, where they existed at all, were treacherous pathways through dark forests and over unguarded mountains. They were arteries of commerce, but also veins of danger. For the common person, travel was a life-or-death gamble. Bandits haunted the forests, preying on merchants and lonely travelers. Local lords, with their own private armies, would often demand extortionate tolls or simply seize whatever they wished. Borders were not lines on a map. They were fluid, violent frontiers that shifted with every petty war and broken treaty. To cross from one territory to another was to enter a new realm of unknown laws and unpredictable allegiances. Amid this chaos, the call of faith was a powerful, unwavering force. For Christians across Europe, the ultimate act of devotion was a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, to walk the ground where their Savior had walked. After the First Crusade reclaimed Jerusalem in 1099, the path was technically open, but the journey was more perilous than ever. Pilgrims, often traveling in small, unarmed groups, had to cross a continent and a sea, facing danger at every turn. They risked not just robbers and hostile armies, but the quiet killers, starvation on barren roads, disease festering in crowded inns, and the sheer exhaustion of a journey that could take years. The roads to Jerusalem were littered with the bones of the faithful. Thousands set out with hope in their hearts, but never returned. Their families back home would simply wait, praying for news that would never come. Faith was strong, but in this violent world, faith alone offered little protection. And in that vacuum of power, in that desperate need for order, a small group of men stepped forward. They were not kings, nor princes. They sought no glory, no land, no wealth. They were driven by a purpose that most knights of the age, obsessed with tournaments and personal honor, had completely ignored. Around the year 1119, a French knight from the Champagne region named Hugues de Payens arrived in the newly established Kingdom of Jerusalem. He had witnessed firsthand the suffering of pilgrims. He saw them robbed, enslaved, and killed within sight of the holy city's walls. Moved by their plight, he gathered 8 of his fellow knights, men who shared his conviction. They stood before the Patriarch of Jerusalem and the King Baldwin II and made a simple, radical promise. They vowed to dedicate their lives to one single mission: to protect Christian pilgrims on the treacherous roads to Jerusalem. They did not call themselves heroes. They were not an army. They had no colorful banners, no vast estates to fund their campaign, no political backing from the great powers of Europe. They possessed only their swords, their armor, and their vows. They swore oaths of poverty, chastity, and obedience, binding themselves not just as soldiers, but as monks. They became a new kind of warrior men who prayed with the devotion of a monk and fought with the ferocity of a soldier. In the beginning, they were so poor they were known as the poor fellow soldiers of Christ. They lived on alms, on donated food and used clothing. Legend says that the first 2 knights, Hugues de Payens and Godfrey de Saint-Amour, were so destitute they had to share a single horse. At first, in the grand, violent theater of the Crusader states, these 9 men were barely a footnote. Almost no one noticed them. Their fortunes began to change when King Baldwin II, recognizing their potential and their piety, granted them a place to live. He gave them a wing of his royal palace, a building that stood on a location of immense significance. The Temple Mount, this sacred ground, holy to Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike, was believed to be the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon. From this new headquarters, this holy and historic foundation, the small brotherhood took its new formal name, the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. Soon they would be known more simply as the Knights Templar. Their presence on the Temple Mount was a powerful symbol, and from this base they began their work in earnest. They patrolled the dangerous road from the port city of Jaffa to Jerusalem, a path infamous for ambushes. Stories began to trickle back to Europe, carried by the very pilgrims they protected. Whispers of a new kind of knight. Knights who escorted helpless travelers through deadly territory, refusing payment. Small groups of warriors standing firm against overwhelming forces. Men who, bound by their sacred oath, did not retreat even in the face of certain death. Europe, a continent hungry for heroes and starved for a sense of order, listened intently. And as the stories spread, Europe responded. The response was not a trickle, it was a flood. Donations began pouring in from every corner of Christendom. Powerful nobles, hoping to secure their own salvation, bequeathed vast tracts of land, castles, and farms to the order. Wealthy merchants donated gold and silver. Common people, farmers, and artisans gave what little they could spare: coin, a bushel of wheat, a prayer. The Templars, who had started with nothing, were suddenly becoming rich. But it wasn't just wealth that flowed to them, it was manpower. Knights from noble families across France, England, Spain, and the German lands traveled to the Holy Land to join the order, trading their worldly ambitions for a white mantle and a red cross. What started as 9 men sharing a horse grew, decade by decade, into one of the most disciplined and formidable military organizations in the medieval world. Their strength, however, did not come just from numbers or wealth. It did not come from the battlefield alone. It came from their rule, from a rigid, unyielding discipline that governed every aspect of their lives. Life as a Knight Templar was unlike anything else in medieval Europe. It was a life of absolute dedication, defined by 3 sacred vows: poverty, chastity, obedience. These were not mere suggestions. They were the very foundation of a Templar's existence. The vow of poverty was absolute. Knights owned nothing, not the land they defended, not the gold that passed through their hands, not even the simple clothes on their backs. Everything belonged to the order. This stripped away personal ambition and earthly attachment, leaving only devotion to their cause. The vow of chastity was equally severe. Marriage was forbidden. Romantic love was seen as a distraction, a weakness that could compromise a warrior's resolve. Even casual closeness with women was heavily discouraged. The Templars believed emotion clouded judgment and weakened the focus required for their holy mission. Their brotherhood was their only family. And then there was obedience. This was the vow that bound them all together. A massive, intricate rule book containing over 600 laws dictated every moment of their lives. It governed how they dressed, how they prayed, how they ate, slept, and even how they fought on the battlefield. Their days began in the cold darkness before dawn. Called to prayer, they prayed multiple times a day, their voices rising in unison within stone chapels. Meals were taken in communal silence, the only sound being the soft recitation of scripture, read aloud to nourish their souls as food nourished their bodies. They were a unified force, visually and spiritually. Each knight wore the same iconic white mantle, a symbol of purity, emblazoned with a stark red cross, the mark of their martyrdom and their unwavering faith. They moved as one body, thought with one mind, driven by one purpose. This was a life of extreme discipline, designed to forge ordinary men into the ultimate holy warriors. For years, they operated in this disciplined but relatively obscure state. But in the year 1129, a decision was made in France that would catapult them from a small, dedicated brotherhood into a global powerhouse. At the Council of Troyes, the Catholic Church officially recognized the Knights Templar as a religious military order. This papal sanction wasn't just a nod of approval. It was a grant of almost unimaginable power. With this single declaration, the Templars were granted extraordinary privileges that set them above the normal structures of medieval society. They were exempt from all taxes. No local bishop or feudal lord could command them. They had the freedom to cross any border, operate in any kingdom, without seeking permission from kings or nobles. Their only master, their sole authority, was the Pope himself. In an age defined by a complex web of feudal loyalties, the Templars answered to no one else. No king could touch them. No prince could tax them. From that moment on, the Knights Templar were essentially untouchable, and their rise, already steady, began to accelerate at a breathtaking pace. Their influence spread like wildfire. A network of Templar castles, known as commanderies, sprouted across Europe and the Holy Land. These were not just fortresses, they were logistical marvels. Each one served as a military base for training knights, a supply hub for their campaigns in the East, and, most critically, something entirely new. These commanderies became financial centers. In a world where travel was perilous, the Templars offered a revolutionary service. A pilgrim heading to the Holy Land could deposit their gold at a Templar preceptory in London or Paris and receive a coded letter of credit. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, they could present that letter and withdraw the equivalent amount minus a small fee. It was safe, it was reliable, and it was brilliant. Kings and powerful nobles quickly took notice. They began to trust the Templars with their national treasuries. Knowing their wealth was protected by the most formidable military order in Christendom, the Templars began issuing loans, financing wars, and managing vast fortunes. Almost without realizing it, Europe was witnessing the birth of something akin to international banking. And the Knights Templar were its architects. They were no longer just a band of warrior monks protecting pilgrims. They had become something far greater, far more complex. They were a financial empire. They were power. Behind the armor and the legends, something else was taking shape. The Templars were becoming revolutionary, not just as warriors, but as architects of a system. A truly multinational organization, the first of its kind. They managed vast networks of farms and fortresses, commanded shipping routes that spanned the known world, and ran intelligence channels that moved information faster and more securely than any royal court. Money, the lifeblood of kingdoms, flowed across borders, not as heavy coin, but as simple, coded documents, rudimentary form of international banking. They had built a machine of logistics, finance, and information long before the rise of modern states. It was a marvel of efficiency. And it was this very system, this unprecedented power, that began to sow the seeds of fear. By the late 13th century, the crowns of Europe owed staggering sums to the order. and no monarch was more deeply indebted than King Philip IV of France. His ambitious wars against England and Flanders had bled the royal treasury dry. Yet the Templars remained immensely wealthy. They were sovereign, independent, seemingly untouchable. Their allegiance was to the Pope alone, not to any king. For a monarch like Philip, obsessed with absolute control, this was an intolerable reality. A power that he could not command was a power that threatened him. And in the halls of the Louvre Palace, the deep-seated fear festered, slowly souring into a cold and calculating resentment. It began with whispers, furtive rumors spreading through the courts and marketplaces of Paris. Tales of secret initiation rituals held behind closed doors. Accusations of heresy, of spitting on the cross, of blasphemy. Most of it was baseless, the product of envy and ignorance. But the truth of the allegations mattered far less than their utility. In an age gripped by religious anxiety and suspicion, a well-placed lie was a more potent weapon than any sword. King Philip saw his opportunity. He listened to the whispers, he nurtured them, and he began to prepare his move, not on a battlefield, but in the shadows. The date was Friday, the 13th of October, 1307, as the first light of dawn broke over a sleeping France. A chillingly precise operation was set in motion. On Philip's secret orders, royal soldiers moved simultaneously across the entire kingdom. Templar commanderies were silently surrounded. Chapel doors were splintered open. Knights, many of them old men, were dragged from their morning prayers, bewildered and in chains. It was a masterclass in coordination and brutality, one of the first centrally planned mass arrests in European history. The charges were read out, each one more shocking than the last. Heresy, idolatry, institutional corruption, unspeakable immoralities. Under the horrific persuasion of torture, some men confessed to anything their accusers demanded. Others, through shattered teeth and broken bones, refused to dishonor their order. In Rome, the Pope, Clement V, was caught off guard. He protested, he hesitated, he tried to assert his own authority over the proceedings. But his hesitation was all Philip needed. It was a fatal delay that sealed the order's fate. The shockwave from that Friday morning radiated across Europe, but the response was fractured. In some kingdoms, like Portugal and Aragon, monarchs resisted Philip's demands, offering the knights protection. In others, rulers saw an opportunity to follow Philip's lead and seize Templar assets for themselves. The ironclad unity that had defined the Knights Templar for 2 centuries shattered under the political pressure. Their Grand Master and his senior leadership languished in a Parisian prison. Their immense wealth was systematically confiscated by the French crown. Their sterling reputation, forged in the crucible of the Crusades, was irrevocably destroyed by a campaign of state-sponsored slander. An institution that had taken nearly 200 years of sacrifice and discipline to build collapsed in just a few short years. The Knights Templar, as a political and military power, vanished from the world stage. But they never truly vanished from history. Their imposing fortresses still stand as silent witnesses across Europe and the Middle East. The innovative financial systems they pioneered laid a foundation for modern banking, and their story, stripped of its context, was absorbed into the realm of myth and legend. To some, they remain the ultimate Christian warriors, martyrs to a greedy king. To others, they are the keepers of ancient secrets, the shadowy conspirators of popular fiction. But beyond the legends and the lies, one truth remains undeniable. For 2 centuries, they built something the world had never seen, and in their rise and their fall, they changed the course of Western civilization forever. The Templars did not fall because of a failure on the battlefield, or because their faith wavered, or because they had grown weak. They fell because they had become too powerful. They built an independent transnational system that operated beyond the control of traditional authority. And history teaches one lesson with brutal consistency. Established power does not tolerate a rival. This is not simply a medieval tale of knights and kings. It is a timeless pattern, a recurring conflict between the institution and the network. And it is a pattern that would repeat itself again and again through the centuries to come. Do you ever feel like you're just on the outside looking in, watching the world from a distance, seeing the surface but missing the depth? There's a whole other side to things, a place where the real stories unfold, away from the bright lights, a world that moves in the quiet moments, in the velvet night. If you're tired of the ordinary, if you're looking for something more, something that speaks to the part of you that understands the beauty in shadows, then you've found your place. This isn't just a channel, it's a community for those who aren't afraid of the dark. We don't just observe it, we become part of it. We are the ones who thrive when the sun goes down. Don't just watch the dark, join the shadows. Click subscribe and unlock the velvet night. I'll see you on the other side.